5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Edge Radio.
You are here with Edge Radio Australia, and look who I've got on the couch. And, you know, Mr. Malloy just said we look like two of the naughty kids that are sitting on the bench down at the master's office.
Headmaster, yeah.
And speaking of which, this is all about going back in time today, Martine, because we're going to talk about revolutionizing our lives through pretty much everything that happens to us in life as a result of relationships.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we have our parents and we have our guardians, we have our teachers, we have our siblings, exactly. We have our exes, we have our friends, we have our frenemies.
Yep.
So this is really compiled the way that we are. And I want to preface this by saying a little quote from the Bible. If life is empty and meaningless, then it is meaningless and empty. And my late husband used to always say, if life is empty and meaningless, then it's meaningless and empty, and therefore nothing has any meaning. Therefore, nothing is wrong because we don't attach any meaning. So just before we were backstage, you said one thing to me, Martine, and I'm going to hit the road running with this question, but you said you're really good at triggering people. Please explain.
So for people to understand, most people do kind of relate that all of us have different kinds of triggers, but then there is a way that people can just be triggered by you walking in the room or your presence. And that I feel like, and I'm not just talking about me, but I can see that and recognize that other people do the same, is because when you have come into a sense of knowing or acceptance within, even though your life might have all gone to the brown stuff and you're still operating at a fairly good, level of integration and clarity in your life, you have to be really authentic to pull a lot of things off. And when you come and be authentic, if you're coming from a place of not only speaking your truth but living it, so that what you say, what you do,
aligned?
Very, not just aligned but fully integrated.
I love that. And it's probably fair that I say Martine is a very talented lady. And I'm going to ask you, what do you think is your core passion in life? Because there's so many things you do, and you are a spiritual healer yourself. You do readings, just for the record, and there is so much about you, but you're also an ambassador for the oceans and sea life. And I'd like to ask you, what is your, if there was number one thing, if God came down on the earth and said, you are going to be a light to the world for one thing, what would it be? Truth. Okay. I love that, because that kind of like can spread right across so many things. So what is the things that you would like truth spread across?
Wow, we're going down a rabbit hole now.
Let's go down.
I would like to see truth and transparency in world systems like governments, banking, the systems that have controlled and ruled our life or applied such parameters that you're living in the matrix. And people can see that now, that our lives are definitely governed by decision makers and authorities and a framework that is not what we personally choose. So you have to personally choose to step outside of that and create your own life and reality. So for me, you have to, if you don't do that, you don't fully free yourself, is my feeling. And I'm not going to make it a belief system. It's just my feeling and knowing
that's very respectful.
What's right, because everyone has to develop their own sense of self and purpose. And that comes from taking a lot of time out to really tear yourself down to the bone marrow and actually really assess who and what you are and where you're going, where you've been.
I love what you've said there. You've got to step out of the matrix and you've almost got to kind of like remove yourself from the shiz. I'm going to call it the shiz. So I'm sure everybody knows what I'm talking about.
Deep brown
And
shizzle.
yeah, exactly. So, you know, regardless of what situation you are in, when you can remove yourself and be objective, can you just enlarge on the matrix? Let's start with that, and then we'll move into 3-dimensional versus 5-dimensional.
Yeah, so the matrix is 3D for me. It's just the belief system that everything that's constructed for us is the reality and the only truth. Instead of coming back to, we will all come to the arrival of our own truth and our own experiences, because that's what being authentic is. And that's where I say, you know, what path is for one person is not for another.
Sure.
Just as that same thing defines what your family dynamic is. So this is where I kind of come back and say, you know, understanding the macro down to the micro and how to join the in-between. So the cycles, the patterns, the imprints, the past, where you're at and where you want to go. So knowing where you are in time and space, know where you've come from, what imprinted on you as a child, and trying to be objective about that, and not, like, you know, there can be anger, there can be pain with a lot of family dynamics. I think that's kind of, being angry and all of that process can be healthy in understanding where what the anger is about. But I think if you stay in that and you stay bitter, you don't fully move through the processes of grief and into the healing process and move beyond it and integrate the lesson. Because when we talked before, you said about relationships isn't about husbands, wives, that kind of stuff.
Not at all.
Relationship is learning through your heart space. So it's the dynamics of learning through caring and loving people.
I love that you were the person sitting here on the hot seat with me today, because you can do all the teaching on this, because that is spot on. I'm sure that everybody that saw relationships, oh, this is great, I'm going to find my perfect match, or this is about, you know, why I don't get on with my husband or wife or my next door neighbor. But that's actually not true. It's about our life experiences and the fact that we have signature imprints, and you just discussed that. So the signature imprints of the way that we see the world and what triggers us and what really impacts us. It's really not about what's going on in the here and now, even though something may have happened. Like there's a lot of people losing their jobs at the moment, for example, and people being absolutely devastated. And we do have questions about that and what happens when you are devastated because of a loss of a job or a loss of a relationship. But it's what meaning you have attached to that. And it's also about the framework of where you've come from. So accumulation is everything. So usually stress is not built in one day. It's usually accumulated over years and unresolved problems. And that's where I love what you just said. And taking people out of the matrix, what's that going to mean? Rising up above?
Yeah, going beyond what the limitations were. So whatever limitations of thought processes, belief systems, I hate to say it, sometimes it can fall into religious indoctrination as well. Of
course, absolutely.
And it's also ingrained ideology and even language. You know, that words are powerful. And when you constantly are repeating something, you're actually, that is your program you're running on. So sometimes I'll pull people up and I'm like, and they're like, what? I'm like, I said, I'm not going to accept you actually saying those words after the process you've just been through. We need to put the remedy in there instead of saying that's what happened. Now I'm moving forward with this. This is my lesson.
Yes. I've been doing a few podcasts this week. I've had a record week actually with the amount of videos and podcasts, and I've had some really deep spiritual leaders and you know, shamans and just they practice beyond the reality and into the unconscious realm. And when you can drop the ego
Mhm.
because ego is probably the number one thing that causes relationships to break down, that causes people to be, so devastated even when they've had a loss of a job, or if they've had something taken away. I think ego plays a huge part.
Can be a positive thing when you're overcoming something, the ego, to sort of engage and ignite the ego to move beyond, because some people who are suppressed may need that to push beyond, like
So
being
true.
bullied in a workplace or things like that. So but when it comes to people losing their jobs, I lost both my businesses during the scamdemic.
The scamdemic. I like that. I haven't heard that one
so
before.
after 2 decades of building
Yeah.
that up, and then not being able to work in that capacity for a long time, and now reestablishing that with having my own healing practice, doing, like you said, healing work, doing tarot readings and mindfulness and soul coaching. That in itself gives me a lot of opportunity to not only sort of have a deeper comprehension of other people, their fears, and helping them join dots of the patterns, because
putting
often
things together.
there might be just one dot or one part that's missing that that is like dropping that in, and it's like the domino effect. You can see it unravel, the lights all come on. They're like, I had never seen it in that context before until you just said that. And because of that, they're like, and that, it's like this realization, this awareness, they get the full body tingles, and you're like, oh, that makes sense that I've been doing that. That is why. And it's like, great.
It's kind of changing the perception of the person. So it's interesting what you say about the scamdemic. And, I realize that even though I kind of held that mindset that I refused to go down through that period of time, I realize that my life had probably been in the darkest place throughout the years of the pandemic. And because I was in this mode where I wasn't able to face up to what was really going on in my reality, I feel that there was so many blockages and that I'd suppressed so much stuff.
Most people were suppressed in that.
So, it's not always a great thing to be positive about something that is negative. So in these podcasts that I've been doing, a lot of the emotional freedom technique, you've heard of that, where you're tapping.
Oh, yeah. I use
and
that
so you're moving through all the meridians, and you're actually stating what it is that you're feeling energetically. And it's not really about the context of, oh, this has happened to me. This person has, sacked me from my job, or this person has left me from that relationship, or this person has kicked me out of my home. It's really about how you feel and the loss of whether it is love, connection, importance, or certainty. And that's what they say human values are based on. So whilst we can try to cover up and be okay about stuff that's not okay, it doesn't always work.
Well, also it's the comprehension of why things happen too. And that's because the emotions are the compass that is saying what things don't feel aligned, or it's not right, that, like unfairness or the betrayal, and that's the trigger emotions, I feel betrayed, or I gave so much, so I feel devalued, and there's all of these sort of trigger words or emotions that can correspond with those kind of underlying core imprints, and that's what they are. So the imprint of betrayal, the imprint of neglect, the imprint of suppression and being shut down. So what you're talking about is so important, and you have to be real about the emotional side, because the emotions are showing us where our compass is pointing to something that's not right.
It's the GPS.
Yeah.
And, the question is, well, when did you experience that neglect, that deep neglect in your family? Like so many people end up.
I'm a Gen X. We could be here all afternoon.
Oh, absolutely. We're both Gen X. I'm just tottering there, but I'm in the Gen X phase. So, and I'm a typical Gen X as well. But, you know, it's when we can locate that, you know, the neglect or the trigger that we have for either uncertainty or all of the above, feeling insignificant or feeling unloved, and recognize that sometimes we remarry we marry our broken parts.
Oh, yeah. And I guess it all comes down to, if you come back to the whole Tesla, everything's about frequency, patterns, and vibration. And so, and so when we come back to that, we are a toroidal field that's giving off a certain vibration. It's often governed by our heart, but many people live out of their head.
Yes.
And the head will overrule the heart when the heart needs to protect itself. And so, you know, when you're coming into a phase where you're starting to realize, wow, there's something about that person that's reminding me of my dad. And it was a lot
we
of
don't
things.
always know that, though, do we? Sometimes we get triggered, and then we realize the trigger is that
the alignment of that energy. It's like there's a resonance that pings it off, and that's what it is. The trigger is the resonance of this action or this energy is recognized within in our unhealed parts, and that's the trigger. So you can go then, like, you know, they're acting controlling. It's like my dad used to be really controlling with my mum or with us or everyone.
Yes.
And that's where it's like, oh my gosh, I have chosen someone that's duplicate. I call it a duplication because it's not always a carbon copy. It's a kind of a duplication, and every time you duplicate it, it changes, it modifies. So it's a duplication of that pattern of imprint from childhood, so you can fully heal it. So you come around again and again and again
until you actually learn. So you've really got to learn, don't you? And I think that's what it is. But I can't express how important it is to be honest and truthful and to really come into our authentic self. One of the shaman healers I was interviewing last night, he was talking about dropping the ego, dropping the whole physical self, and coming into our full presence of who we are in our reality, and coming in so that we're not carrying the sins of the father, we're not carrying the sins of our past, and we're becoming as one. So we're becoming like so wholesome. This was honestly one of the deepest podcasts I've ever done, and I'm yet to go back and listen to it because it's one of those things that you have to.
Things you might not have absorbed.
But you know, he was saying how we've got to become really authentic, and of course, when you think of authentic, you think of, you know, not putting on a mask, being ourself, you know, doing that sort of thing. But it's authentic so that we're not being anybody else. We're not carrying the pain of our next door neighbour or the boss that fired us or the ex, boyfriend or girlfriend that dropped us. Yeah.
So we are the culmination of our past, sometimes present, if you're that kind of person and you understand that you might not be from the past, moving right along. So, you know, we're the culmination of our experiences. And so we can either look at those and have a comprehension that, you know, like I say to people all the time, we choose our parents. Sit with that for a little bit. And people go, oh, I say bullshit to that. Look, I don't care what you say. Because when it comes down to it, you choose to come into a physical vessel, and you as a soul chose your mother, and you chose the circumstances to come into this life to have this experience.
Yeah.
What you make of those experiences, the things you learn and how you evolve beyond it, you use them as either a platform in success and to outgrow or to stay at the same level is absolutely determined by the way that you integrate that into your being and realize that you are not or some of
your
that.
Past.
You're your own soul. Your own purpose on here has got nothing to do with any of that. Only the lessons to be the platform to grow from.
Yeah,
So,
I love that. I
yeah.
mean, you are not your emotions. You are not your addictions.
Yeah.
You're just very stylistic at it. That was a very classic quote that Richard Bandler would say. You're very good at that, aren't you? Whether it was smoking cigarettes or
Yeah, very
drinking
good at
alcohol,
that.
you've become very stylistic.
Mhm.
And look, it's okay for us to make fun of ourselves sometimes, so that we're not taking life too seriously. And even when we catch ourselves in that emotional funk, so to speak,
Mhm.
you grab that funk and you ask yourself, well, what am I feeling and what am I saying to myself?
Mhm.
And
Internal
you'd be
dialogue.
surprised what your internal dialogue is saying to you
Mhm.
about other people, about yourself. By the way, other people don't care. Nobody cares. I mean, everybody's too busy, thinking about themselves
Yeah,
to be
totally.
caring about you. So just sit on that for a moment. But, at the end of it all, I mean, life really needs to be one that we don't get to the end of our life and suddenly realize I wasted all that time
Yeah.
not doing the things that I want to do,
Mhm.
not being confident and feeling self-conscious or feeling helpless. And what for? If the older you could go back to the younger you, what would you do? What would you be telling yourself? But you know what? We've got some questions. Do you want to read
Awesome.
them out?
Sure.
I will bring them up on the screen.
So we've got here, why do I attract women that resemble my mother? I had a messy divorce and I have still not been able to move on. Any tips?
I'm sorry, I wasn't laughing about, you marrying women like your mother. I was just laughing because that's exactly what we're talking about.
That's what we
And,
mentioned previously.
I remember working with a guy who was extremely industrious, very successful, and he was the greatest guy. He was so, and he still is. And he just kept on being involved in these relationships. And you know something? It was hurt, unresolved pain and hurt
Trauma.
that he'd had from his mother.
Childhood, yeah.
And he was still trying to resolve that pain. So you've been through a messy divorce.
So the one thing I would do is track back the patterns from your mother imprint. And I would break it down into a number of phases. So between the ages of 1 and 7, and then 7 to 14, and then what the dynamics were between 14 and 21. And the reason why I say that is because we are developmentally going in cycles as the soul.
Yeah.
So from 1 to 7, you're fully in your mother's etheric. And then from age 7 to 14, you start to step out by about, maybe 40, 50%. Some people are more. But you're still connected to your mother's etheric up until you're 14. And then outside of 14, you completely leave your mother's etheric. And that really does kind of encapsulate why in year 9 high school, people derail.
Oh,
And so
that's
interesting. That's the magic number at 14.
Oh, do you think that
year 9.
people ought to cut those umbilical cords perhaps even earlier?
No, because it's unhealthy. It's meant to be that way.
Right.
So we're meant to be that. These are natural human and etheric cycles that we're meant to have, that it helps us feel safe. And so if you go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's a great thing to go and look up for this person as well.
Yes.
Maslow's hierarchy of needs shows us that the foundation blocks that are there as a child need to be solid before you can continue on. Otherwise, what happens is that's where you have a constant cascade down one side, because one of the foundation blocks or bricks wasn't there in place. And whether that's because the mother was never emotionally available and they were attracting women that repeated the unavailable or shallow women that just worked on a very surface level but never nurtured and opened their soul to really accepting who you were fully, those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's amazing. And something that you've just said there that has kind of triggered me to, I guess, mentioned this to for this question. Sorry that I don't have your name there. And that is that if you could go back to the inner child, and as you've just heard Martine talking about, and ask, what did that inner child need? Like, what was it that you didn't perceive you had? And so you might be surprised. Like, I know that when I ask this question in a session, it might be, well, I needed more love, or I needed more security, or I needed to feel important. I needed to feel like I was somebody of importance.
Yeah.
And when you ask yourself those questions, it's okay to also acknowledge how you have been feeling, because with these women and plus your ex-wife, you've obviously married someone that you have perceived through your own soul to teach you a lesson that it doesn't sound like you may have learned. However, moving forward, the way to do it is to go back and
to
learn.
map it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, get a piece of paper, write between 1 and 7 incidences or things that stick in your mind where were moments where, you know, whether it was Christmas or something else in your birthday, and whether it was like a sense of emotional abandonment even though they were in the room. So those kinds of things, if they weren't nurturing and affectionate or loving, write them down and be real about it, and then go, you know, you chose your mother to learn these lessons. So maybe in this life what you chose is to resolve that you need to learn how to nourish your own soul, nurture your own soul,
Yes.
and that soft feminine aspect is something that you need to integrate within yourself and be able to recognize that you chose your mother as someone who didn't have that developed part of their aspect, but that doesn't mean that you can't. And so they were maybe operating at the capacity they could in this life. And so what you've got to do is find a way to forgive them first. So you've got to forgive the original imprint, and then all those that followed after. So you might see that there was a repeat of pattern, especially with the divorce. If there was children involved, I can understand that it might have been even more tumultuous. I work with a lot of fathers that are estranged from their children, and I do a lot of emotional working through and hold space for them to work through that. So with the resolving that, maybe it's a good idea to reach out to someone and just say, I think it would be good to do some sessions of what it is that I need to do.
Yeah, there is a lot there. There is a lot there. But if I was going to kind of bring something solid to just a couple of things Martine has suggested, which is amazing, but I know a lot of people, they might go, okay, how do I do that? But I think what Martine has pointed out is writing down, and that is very powerful to get it down on paper, and also asking the question, what does that inner child need, or what do you feel would have equipped you and empowered you to have, you know, like hindsight is 20/20 vision, right?
Absolutely.
We have these things occurring, and if we could go back in time and change it, like, oh my gosh, if only I had said that, or if only I had done that. I mean, it's always that way of doing that. But here's the thing. No regrets, just embrace it. The forgiveness is so vital. I've just done a full breakthrough with one of my clients, and the forgiveness part of it was probably the biggest part.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's the piece where you are learning what you needed to learn from that pain. And it may not be necessarily from, you know, the child of origin or the family of origin. It may be even here and now. What can you learn? And in understanding what you learn, it's about thanking it, being grateful, and actually saying, I'm grateful for that experience because that's taught me so much now.
Forgiveness turns down the volume on the emotional attachment and the energy you invest in that. And so what it is that to have that capacity where you do turn down the volume and you can see things more objectively, or be able to just, like, with compassion, detach and just go, okay, I can see that that's something I really needed to learn.
Yeah.
And I need to man up, or I need to whatever up.
Woman
and
up.
Just take it on the chin and realize I didn't set boundaries, or
Yeah.
I didn't do this, or I didn't do that. And that's what you need to do, not only with yourself, then it will happen with other people.
And you know what? I think we're all born with an imagination. It doesn't matter how clued up you are about any kind of work, the work that Martine does, the work that I do, or anybody else. You know, we've all got an imagination. You know, you can create what you can create in your imagination. It may be that you can't change history, but you don't have to be a victim of your history. You can be a master of your destiny. But here's the next question. I'll just bring it up on the screen.
Oh, beautiful. Okay. I'm suffering massive self-esteem issues since an abusive relationship with a man. I'm sorry to hear that. This has also been compounded by a workplace bullying situation, and one of NLP or hypnosis can help. I think there are so many ways that you can help yourself and then get external help. The one is that you've started to connect the abusive personal relationship with the work relationship. You're seeing there's a pattern there of people thinking that they can cross boundaries with you. This is what I talked about. So they know that if you've had a pattern and there is an imprint in you of being bullied as a child, or you don't have the confidence in standing up for yourself, that people know intrinsically, they can feel from your energy field, your vibration, that they can push the boundaries and bully you and push you around. So abusive relationship is something completely different, because you're talking about not just crossing the boundaries, it's actually abusive then becomes incredibly destructive in a way.
And it can be mental or physical, can't it?
Absolutely. I mean, breaks the trust different than just a work relationship.
Yeah, because sometimes being put down by a partner or, you know, undermined, people,
that word,
you know
that
undermined.
expression, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. That is the biggest load of garbage.
It really is.
Go back to when you're a kid and someone called you this or that or whatever, and it's like, it's devastating.
You know, I don't know about you, but I was bullied, but I was also the bully as well. I know that I can pick it.
With freckles. No, I wasn't bullied at all.
I didn't have freckles. She's not talking about me.
But they didn't do it very well. Because it's not for myself.
Good on you.
That. Yep, no.
Martine's a little fireball. Don't mess with the Martine, okay? But no, seriously.
Yeah.
Truly, I mean, I
think
hear
everyone
you,
experiences
and
it at some
everybody
point.
has experienced it. But quite often, I heard this as well. Like, I've learnt so much from the podcasts I've done this week. But when you hear someone talking about someone else, it doesn't really tell a very highly emotionally intelligent person about that other person. It tells you a lot about the person talking, because it's their inner world. It's the way that they're seeing things. Now, when it comes to bullying and undermining, let's face it, if somebody has to undermine a person, why are they putting them down? They're putting them down to actually bring themselves up.
Elevate themselves.
So their self-esteem is actually probably just as much at stake as yours. But it's interesting because I remember bullying is such a huge thing right now. And in our schools, and
I think it always has been.
You know
what's
going on
now is very different.
Exactly, but people are doing things, unaliving themselves. You're hearing about kids and things like this that's going on as a result of being bullied. And I can remember working with a teenage boy who was being bullied, and all of a sudden I got him to sort of step out of his own physical body, because everything is all about ourselves. Let's face it, we're always like about ourselves. Other people don't care, but we are about ourselves, about what other people are doing, what other people are thinking, when in fact, you know, when I asked him to kind of do what you were talking about in the beginning, rather than getting stuck in the 3D matrix of being stuck in your body and nursing and rehearsing this problem of being bullied, step out. This is the time to disassociate and move into 5-dimensional and have a look and find out what's going on for the other person.
You know, it's a really good thing. You talked about stepping out. I think it's great sometimes when you can do like a 10-foot step back. Step back 3
that's a good
feet,
strategy.
step back 10 foot, view it from above. How does it look? Like,
Yes.
it's getting you to
A
look
bird's
at
eye
it,
view.
yeah, bird's eye view of the situation. So if you were the third person looking at this scenario, what would you do if you saw that person attacking or saying something degrading to another person? Would you go, hey, whoa, stop it? Like, that's unacceptable. Like, you don't have the right to say those things to someone that's really damaging or whatever. What would you actually say if that was the other person?
Yes.
So what I find is that people will sometimes stand up for others but not themselves. And so that's where it's bringing back to self-accountability again, because we are making conscious choices, whether we want to acknowledge it or not, about unconscious patterns. So recognizing I'm making choices consciously and unconsciously about where I'm putting myself, who I'm sharing my energy with. And either you're feeling safe or you're not. And if you're putting in situations where you don't feel safe, go back to your childhood and realize, did you feel safe as a child in all of the aspects of your life? And if not, you need to identify why. If there was abusive relationships, I worked in domestic violence, so I was an advocate, and I have heard some of the most horrific stories you could ever imagine that have occurred, and I won't get into that because I can't.
We don't need to go into stories.
No, but what I can say is there's usually a pattern, so even if it was a minor situation, maybe there was a few situations when you were younger, they still would imprint. And so that even though the pattern might have changed, it still was there, the imprint, and it caused trauma, and that's what you saw, and that's what you're trying to resolve in this life, is this bullying, crossing boundaries, lack of respect.
Did you notice, I don't know whether you would have, because if you dealt with so many people, and I know when people would come into clinic and they would talk about not just mental abuse, but they'd talk about physical abuse as well.
Oh, yeah.
But they'd stay with the partner. Have you ever come across that where people, they are still, it's like they're locked into that relationship. It's almost like they feel comfortable. They can't leave it.
I think
because it becomes their normal.
Yeah. So what it is that I find that it becomes the running program mentally for them. They're saying they don't have the strength to leave this, or this person, I need to be with them. I'm fixing them. Without, they're going to escalate if I'm not here. There's so many stories we tell ourselves, and that's where it's the loop. So the one thing I will say for the question about what you can do, I know, and I have experience, and this is what I also teach people that have been in abusive relationships, is that you must do body-based counseling.
Oh, yeah.
Because when you are
the
back
body
in your
keeps
body,
the score.
your body will tell you where you're storing the stress and the trauma, and that there will be parts like the hips, the lower back, where you have lower back pain, or there's knee problems because you can't move forward in your life because of that abuse. Your body will tell you what's going on. So you need to do body-based counseling, and do it in an integrated way, so that you're working with the body and you're doing a mapping of some of the psychology that brought you to that point from your history, maybe with your family, that kind of thing. It can also...
That's very sophisticated, Martine. But, even if people...
But it's integrated.
Yeah,
so I have to work on it integrated, because you have to work on the body, the mind, the soul, and consciousness, and then you have to express it in all ways. So your body needs to be able to do that boundary work, forces, and move through that, so you feel strong to protect yourself or put back your boundaries in place.
Have you read the book,
the words.
The Body Keeps the Score? So for people out there that are perhaps going, wow, this is really that's very sophisticated language that you're saying. It's kind of like if you even recognized your body, like Martine is saying, in layman's terms, and you said, where am I holding that feeling? So quite often, if it's in your back, in your lower back, or I tend to hold it in my solar plexus, and it tends to get stuck around the heart, this area here, and also my neck and my shoulders. So it's almost like when I become conscious of it, and I'll go, oh, hang on a minute, I'm stiff, I'm holding tension. and then you become aware. That's so powerful. And then that kind of gives you that ability to release. But there was something that I heard, a little quote. This is not my quote, but someone I said, and I thought it was so powerful, that another person can only give you the respect and self-esteem that you have for yourself. So you are the one who needs to know who you are, to stand in your power and to stand in your truth. And also remember, you will get more, get this, you will get more of what you tolerate.
The first word you need to learn is no.
I agree.
Can you say no first? No to other people.
Practice it.
No to allowing things to cross over your boundaries or things that upset or hurt you.
Yeah. Okay, next question.
All
We've
right.
only got a few minutes left. Let's do it.
I have just been laid off from my job. As a middle-aged man, I'm struggling to find my mojo. Oh, I can empathise with you there. Getting your mojo back after you've lost a lot of things is a challenge. I have a huge mortgage and confidence has taken a hit. Any thoughts of where I'd start? Body base for men. Men that get their bodies back in shape, get their minds back in shape. That's the one that I would say if you're not
that would be
out,
that would be a very good start. Do you know, I have heard so many stories. People around me are literally losing their jobs, and in our world right now, where we are in a critical, really part of what's going on, with our interest rates and with our, with our economy and petrol, and even though petrol's actually okay at the moment, but don't talk too soon. But everything
out loud.
but everything is kind of the way it is. And there's no getting away from it. It sucks, right? But the fact is, I know I've told this story before, but it's the story of the man who was on the farm and his son had just fallen off a horse and broken his leg. This is a long time ago. And his neighbor turned around and said to him, "Oh, that's terrible. That's a disaster." And the father said, "I don't know." And, it's like, why would he not agree that that was a disaster? There was a war that broke out 2 weeks later. And guess what? Guess who didn't go to war? So you don't know, like, even though it sucks that you've been laid off from your job, but when you can come into, okay, let yourself know it does suck. Yeah. Let yourself roll around in the mud for a while and understand that there is so much that you might feel is at stake with your mortgage and everything else. But you've got to come into an acceptance. And somewhere inside you, you've got to believe that there is going to be something that is going to be so much better, that when you land into that space in the future, you'll go, "Oh my God, thank God I lost my job. Look at me here and now," but
the universe has always got my back.
Release the dwelling side of it. Allow yourself to dwell for a while, but you've got to do some work around it.
So I totally agree with all of that, because that's what I say is, like, the universe has always got my back. It's always working for my good. And the thing is that what it does is that we always have things like this happen. There's crises or events that happen to test us.
Yes.
And not just that, but to strip us down, to show us who we really are.
Oh,
you are not defined by that job, just so you know. You are not defined by your income, just so you know. The human being that you are is the human being that came into this world, incredible, full of potential, and none of that has changed. And the world is still your oyster. It's just the way that you're looking at it. To change your perspective on where you are in your life, as far as, okay, so that's where I've come from. Where do I want to go? Do you want to go back in the same industry? Do you want to change it up? This is an opportunity to kind of reinvent yourself. And I look at that as a challenge to go, okay, so that is the version of who I used to be. Do I want to continue with that because it's really authentic to me? Sure, let's do that. But let's aim for something different that aligns more, that either gives you more time with your family, or it puts you in a position where you can be in a rural area because you always wanted to live in the country. All of those things. So look at that and just go, there's going to be a blessing in disguise with all of this. It's just that you just need to give yourself a chance to work through and resolve it and allow the next opportunity to come in to welcome it in. So don't be down on yourself. Go, you know what? Bring it on, universe. I'm ready for another opportunity.
And please do not hear us saying that it doesn't suck, because it does suck.
That is not what I'm saying.
And, you know, as Martine has said earlier on in the show, even writing, so that journaling, getting it all out, asking yourself the questions, you know, what is the highest purpose that this could be happening? And just to close down the show, how about having a vision of who you want to be in the future, even if it is that you do not know specifically what that role is going to be for you. What if you knew how it's going to feel? What if you could imagine the feelings of being in that next phase of your freedom? How does it feel? What does it look like? What do you hear? What are people saying? And, you know, really just embrace that vision, bring it back to yourself, do a lot of journaling. And what can I say, Martine, you have been amazing. Thank you so much for, you know, bringing so much to this this session today. And remember, you can contact Martine, you can contact me. You may even want to come and sit on the hot seat, whatever you want to do. And in the meantime, you are listening to Edge Radio Australia. Make sure you subscribe.
Edge Radio.